I'm trying to understand, let's say, in big banks that have thousands of employees, presences all over the world, how do you build your personal identity that's unique to you so everyone around the team knows this is Nadia, this is how she's going to deal with the customer, and we value her because of that?
A lot of people think that if you want to achieve something in life, sometimes it's important to kind of mirror and match what
Conform,
other
yeah.
people do. And absolutely not, because then that takes away from what makes you special. So I think it's really about understanding who you are as a person and what you can actually bring to the table and write it down, because every single day it's something new.
Today's guest brings together two worlds that rarely meet: a stellar career in the corporate banking world and a passion for storytelling and brand building. Nadia Al-Mahdi has spent the past 2 decades at one of the world's biggest financial institutions, helping the brand build its customer base and help with community engagement. She then did something that a lot of people wouldn't do. She left this stable corporate job to start her own venture. Today's episode is going to be all about that and understanding her journey. Nadia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Akash. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. I wanted to understand what drew you into banking to start with.
You know what? I was actually offered a position when I was just 18 years old. And the direction that I wanted to take was completely a different field. I wanted to join the airline industry. And so when the opportunity was given to me, I always believed that just say yes and figure out how to do it. So when I got into it, I stepped into a customer service role. And slowly I began to realize that I was such a natural at that position because I got to meet people from different industries, different cultures. And that for me was something that was very rewarding because you build long lasting relationships. And that's how I stepped into the banking industry. And then I grew into different positions from there. And before you know it, 20 years hit, and that was that. Yeah.
Did you ever imagine that you'd spend this much time in a bank or a financial institution?
If anyone who knows me knows that I'm not the kind of person who can stick to anything, because I love experiencing life itself and trying different sort of things. But I didn't realize it. But what I did know that was I was really good at it. The people I worked with were great, and it was a very rewarding journey. So yes, I did stick it out, and it was amazing.
So you mentioned you got this offer at the age of 18.
That's right.
And this wasn't something particularly that you had studied for or that you had learned, and you learned along the job. Where did you get that confidence at such a young age to start doing something that you weren't entirely familiar with?
I think, you're just 18, you're still very young. And at that point in time, you're still kind of testing and trying different sort of things. And the beauty about starting out in the banking industry, especially this particular bank that I was working with, is that they allowed me to shine. They allowed my authenticity to sort of be available and they utilized me in the best way possible, and they encouraged me. For me, that was exactly where I realized that this is where I see myself staying in and growing within. So
When you have that culture where a company actually cares for its team, or they give you that foster that innovation to grow, that really helps. You don't see that with a lot of companies around the world.
no, you don't.
But I think companies should start doing that. What do you think?
Absolutely. They should definitely do that. I mean, I can't speak for other companies at this point because my whole life was within this industry and working for this one organization. But absolutely, if that's what it is, that's what they should encourage, is basically the authenticity and letting people be themselves and giving them a platform to share thoughts and ideas.
Because then the person actually feels heard, they feel valued, and their end contribution helps the company grow.
Definitely.
What do you think you've learned in the 20 years in leadership, in service? What has been your biggest couple of lessons?
I think it's I would say listen to understand. Sometimes everyone wants to have a piece of the cake, and there's so many ideas that want to be thrown into one pot. And, and with that, we miss so many amazing ideas or thoughts or suggestions. So I think a lot of it comes from a place of, you know, it's great to have passion and great to have that enthusiasm, but also relax, because you might miss out listening or learning or growing from something that's just right there in front of you.
And what happens typically with the finance field as well, I can understand with what you're saying is there are very strict processes. There's rules, there's timelines. We close our books by the particular date.
Yep.
These are the certain statements that you do. So there isn't so much of space to grow and innovate in terms of the process. But from what I hear you're saying is these, you take a moment to slow down and try and understand how things work, because from then on, things get much better.
Exactly. Especially in the fast-paced world that we're moving in the UAE, it's very important to, keep yourself involved and keep yourself up to date with so much that's happening around you. So, yes.
And it keeps changing as well
It
on
does.
a daily or a weekly basis. I'm trying to understand, let's say in big banks that have thousands of employees, presences all over the world, how do you build your personal identity that's unique to you so everyone around the team knows this is Nadia, this is how she's going to deal with the customer, and we value her because of that?
A lot of people think that if you want to achieve something in life, sometimes it's important to kind of mirror and match
Conform,
what other
yeah.
people do. And absolutely not, because then that takes away from what makes you special. So I think it's really about understanding who you are as a person and what you can actually bring to the table, and write it down, because every single day it's something new. So put that down and find the right place and the right time to allow that to come through, and people will notice you.
So it takes a little bit of time. You said write it down, and then from there things get so you learn more about yourself.
Absolutely, because you're giving respect to yourself and you're giving respect to the other person as well. Yeah.
In terms of a customer service role or position, what do you think that means? When we look at how it's actually measured, they use a net NPS score, they look about customer satisfaction ratings, but you meet so many different kind of customers on a day-to-day basis. What do you think that means to you?
I think for me is really understanding about the mission and vision of the organization, right? And one of the visions and missions of the banking industry that I was working with was to basically put people at the heart of everything that we do and make their dreams come true. And I always take it back to myself. So for me, it's like, when I think about what do I want to achieve in life, okay, I want to buy myself a nice house. I want to be able to go on a nice vacation at the end of the year. So everything requires planning. And I think understanding that and being able to ask the right questions is what makes your customers feel very secure, safe, and they trust you. And then you realize it's not about that interest rate. It's not about,
The customer service, yeah.
it's purely that relationship that you have with an individual. And it's not about asking the same questions to every single customer. It's about really listening to them, find out what matters to them. Someone for them is like, protecting their families, and then for someone else, it could be all about, well, I have my own set of personal goals. So adapt yourself and ask the right questions to be able to nourish and grow that relationship into something that's, to be honest, priceless.
And when you do these things, customers usually respond back. They're pretty happy. But there are many moments where customers aren't happy in general. And to me, when I understand customer service, whether it's a call center, a bank, or any kind of company, usually the mindset of people would be to reach out to customer service only when they have a problem.
That's right.
It's quite rare for at least me or anyone else to call a customer service line and say, I'm very happy with your service.
That's true.
In fact, probably a lot of, we take the example of someone in a call center where you press number 1, number 2, let's say you press a number for a complaint or a suggestion. It's usually more than the other. It's a complaint, it's a grievance. They're not happy about something. So with that kind of mindset from customers, where the focus is always on, and rightly so, their problems, how do we make sure that we create that environment for them to actually share that and maybe change it towards the positive?
You know what? Okay. When I think, let me give an example about, brands, for example, right? People are not worried about what something costs. What they're worried about is the transparency. And I think a lot of people think that they give value by promising them X, Y, Z, and then that should satisfy the individual into going for something. For me, it was extremely different because I believe that the honesty and transparency that you offer somebody is what's going to make sure that they come back to you, because they know that it's going to sustain over X amount of time. And then they actually bring in more referrals to you. And then before you know it, you've created this whole community amongst yourself just on the basis of clear communication and transparency.
So not many people think about that long-term vision. I imagine they probably have a target. In any industry, I'm not being very specific, any industry, they'd have a target, they have a revenue, they get commissions. And so when they communicate that to the customer anywhere in the world, sometimes they provide incorrect communication and they think that, the short term would be a customer signs up, they buy the product from me, I get the commission.
That's right.
And I move to the next step. But what they don't realize is eventually it's the word of mouth. And when you do damage to your own brand, then it causes an irreparable chain that's very difficult to fix.
Agreed. 100%.
And I think that's one of the reasons why bigger banks or companies or those that are always in the top 50 or top 100, why they succeed for more than hundreds of years is because they make sure that all of their thinking is long term.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
So 20 years in a corporate institution, one of the biggest banks in the world, and you decide to do the unthinkable. Or so I say, and you decide to leave this corporate role to start something on your own. How did you get to that kind of thinking? And what was the final point that made you think personally that this is what I want to do?
Okay, so I was in 2019. I was expecting, twins, somewhere in October, and then, well, my dad fell sick. I remember that he passed away that night on October 29th.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Alhamdulillah. So when he passed away, it really hit me about how fast time flies. And it was the most heartbreaking thing for me going into back home where everything of his was around me, but he no longer was there. And so, it took me about 2 years in recovery, because when I went into his, I was playing with his perfumes and his oud and atar and bukhur and his favorite fragrances, and that was the only thing that would sort of help me just be calm down for a couple of minutes. I would just smell it and I'd be like, oh my God, this is what he smelled like. And I was thinking about how many people go through so much, and we have to close that door when we go into work, because, we're moving really fast in this world and we don't even have the time to mourn over a loved one. And that for me was really, really painful. So when I went back, I remember going back to work, and while I was doing my job, I remember I was feeling fine, but there were tears sort of pouring down my eyes and I couldn't stop it for whatever reason. I literally didn't feel I was crying as a person, but they were just nonstop tears. And I walking into a meetings, I would just keep wiping my face. It was a really hard time for me. And that's when I said, I have no value to offer right now. There's absolutely nothing that I can do right now to offer value to this organization. And out of respect for the years that I've put in and the years that they've actually given me, I thought the right thing to do was to leave and move away. And so going back to this story where I was sitting at home and, his fragrances were just lying over there and I started playing with them. And I thought, what if I could create a safe place for people where they could have candles that are inspired by the hospitality of your home. So it kind of brings them back, a memory in time, and you can light it in the, comfort of your home, enjoy the aroma, find that space to relax, but also get to use that on your skin so that it can help you feel good and relaxed and comfortable being who you are and have that sense of, safety and familiarity at the same time. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that deeply personal story. It is quite true that there isn't a lot of time in the day-to-day world, and whether you have a job or a business, when things like these happen, the expectation, I think, from society is to move on quite quickly. Your work doesn't stop, your business doesn't stop, and the pace is quite frenetic in the day-to-day. What was the reaction of your of the bank that you were working for when you said this? Did they try to say that stay a bit longer, or did they respect the decision?
I think they understood because we had a sit down and I explained in detail of truly how I felt. And what they did say is that if you ever wanted to come back, you could always do that. But I think at this stage, I realize life is so short to not be trying different things. And there was a bigger message that I wanted to share with the world, which is to take time for yourself. It's okay to stop for a moment, because if you don't take care of you, there is absolutely no value that you can give to your family, to your parents, to your spouse, to your kids, to your friends, to any relationship around you. It's all impacted by one thing and one thing alone, and that is what you pour into your own cup. And this is why I said, well, let me just step into this and start playing around and creating some candles and see if it helped me. And it really did. It really helped me feel good about myself. It helped me realize that the past doesn't always have to be the past. It's always beautiful memories that you could take with you into your future. And that's what I do with my travel candles. So I create these mini travel candles. And they basically, they're on-the-go candles that you can take with you anywhere, anytime you need to feel a moment of self-reflection.
And what happens is when your cup isn't full, you can't flow. When it's empty, when you yourself are grieving or you haven't healed. So it's really important for that time taking. So you decide to start your company, you start experimenting with fragrances, candles. Then you decide, okay, I'm going to call it House of Nadia. What were the first couple of months like in terms of the whole process of starting, setting up a location and all that? If you can walk us through that.
So my business is actually an e-commerce business. So everything that I do is from from home. And when I first started out, it was hard because I didn't know which direction I wanted to take. And then sometimes you get drifted away from, the whole purpose of what you do. And it was all about coming back to exactly where I see this going. What exactly, again, what do I want people around me and my communities to feel? And there was testing products, finding the right suppliers, being able to, I didn't even know how to sort of manage pricing and this and that. But you know what, Akash, something that really helped me was Facebook groups. A lot of people are scared to ask for help or support when they need it, but Facebook groups really, really help. And I reached out to so many people saying, listen, guys, I don't really have a budget for something. I need advice on XYZ. And so many people were able to give me, half an hour of their time and help me go through the nitty-gritty details on kickstarting this idea that I have.
So you started with bootstrapping. You did this company from the ground up, and you obviously got a lot of support from different people. What do you think has been the biggest lesson for you in the first year, at least, of starting this company?
I think patience and being opening to learn. Because sometimes we have an idea in our mind and we want to see it go through exactly that way. But sometimes the reality is something else. For example, when you come to the fragrances and body care candles, we need to get the montaja, which is basically, getting product testing, so many things. And sometimes you think, no, I can go around it and just, put my product out there and not take those precautions. But then again, there are so many aspects of the business as a whole that you need to take care of to make sure that the products are clean, they're tested, they're certified, people it's safe to use on your skin. And so I think my biggest lesson would have been that there was always something to learn every second, and you have to quickly change and adapt to that at that moment. So you have to give yourself the patience sort of to do that, and understanding that this is what you need to work on. And that's the reality, that you might have an idea and something else might come out of it. And it is what it is.
And that's okay.
And that's
So let's say you have an idea and you decide to start a company. In terms of funding, whether it's with House of Nadia or any other company that someone else wants to start, how do they approach that initial funding? Do they take it from their own savings? Do they reach out to a bank, perhaps for a business loan or a personal loan, or do they speak to friends and families? What's your recommended approach from your experience?
So I think for me, when it comes to funding, I started with I think $1,000. And that was mainly focused on getting my license and website up and running. And the rest was really, just learning different skills. I could always hire somebody for marketing. I could hire somebody for sales. But I decided that, I can't afford this right now. I can't afford to hire somebody. But what I can do is I can open up YouTube and use all these resources that are free. And I can give myself the time of day to learn, understand, and apply those practices. And, with social media, TikTok especially, you get to go live and you, again, build that relationship, be able to talk about your product. And it's being consistent. A lot of the times people come on, they do a couple of videos in a week, and that's about it. But there's a lot more, and that's free. You don't need to pay for all of these things. So not everything, to be honest, is about money. Yes, you need that initial funding to make sure that, okay, if a company reaches out to you, are you licensed? Yes, you are. If you do you have a website that I could refer to? Yes, I do. And these are the basic things that you can set up, and then the rest you just feed it back. Use whatever tools you can to promote for free, and then go back to take whatever you've earned and then feed it back into your business, and then you rotate. You start very small, and then it eventually picks up, and then it grows from there. Yeah.
So then what about the time factor? In the sense, there are a lot of free resources on YouTube, on TikTok, but you're spending many months or years learning these new skills to develop yourself. At the same time, you want to grow your business, you want to bring revenue, and you want to reach out to customers. Because we don't hire in the beginning for funding the company, we spend a lot of time learning it ourselves. So then how do you manage when your time is spent on learning versus growing the business? Is it really possible to do everything in a business to start with?
Yes, it is possible. And I think that comes from, managing your own time. The thing is, Akash, we're not in a rush, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could be sitting with you right now as we are having this conversation, and I could drop dead, and what's going to happen from there is what about my business? It is what it is, right? And I think people think that, they're always trying to run faster than they can catch a breath. And I think people need to understand that, slow down, take it easy. Yes, you want to do X, but these are the things that you need to do to achieve that. And split your time within, 2 days learning, 3 days applying, and work it out, because life gets to you, and you want to enjoy what you do. This is your baby. You can take as much time as you want to, and you can enjoy it. And I think it sustains as well, because you get to, again, you just get to be yourself, and you get to take life as it comes. And there's no rush when it comes to learning. There's no rush when it comes to applying, no matter how old you are. So take your time.
And it comes back to the initial conversation we were having about the banking thing as well, that it's not very quick. Building a reputation or building that customer base, whether it's working in a company or starting your own venture, that takes time, and you should go for that slow pace where you have that growth overall.
Definitely. Well, I think growth just comes with, life and itself. You wake up every single day. You get to, it's just reflecting who you are as a person, and what do you want to be known in this world for. So even at work, what do you want people to remember you? I love it when I still, for example, get messages and say, "Oh my God, the queen of networking," and it wasn't just about networking. It was about really sustaining and growing the community. And I love that, even though it's been 5 years that I've left the banking industry, I love that my customers still contact me when they need help. And I still stay in touch with some of my colleagues. And I always am able to kind of make that connection and, help them to this date. So that never really dies, You always take that with you. And that's there's no... And that comes again with learning and growing and pushing boundaries.
It's a continuous effort for that.
Absolutely.
So you're in the business, you start working on it, couple of years, months pass by, and then you get your sale, people have repeat orders, it goes up. When do you start? Was there ever a feeling where like, you know what, I think I've made it. Now things are going really well. And whatever vision I had in the beginning, I can see that. I can see it's materializing.
So I think for me, making it, I'm someone who's always hungry for growth. So will I ever make it? I highly doubt it, because I always, once I've achieved a certain goal, I'm on to the next. And that's how it works for me personally. But I also think that one of the things that truly satisfied me was where I'm at a point that I don't have to reach out to people and people just reach out to me. So I'm like, I've done the work, I've pulled a couple of strings. And a lot of people think when you go into their social medias, oh, they've got X amount of followers, that means they're thriving. And you can't compare it to numbers. You just cannot. Because I have for example, I got over 1,500 followers on social media. And the amount of DMs that I get, it's literally over a 50% conversion. And for me, that means a lot, because they're looking for things for themselves, for their families, for their baby showers, for their salons, for their spas. So I'm really satisfied when it comes to, people approaching me now, and me being able to just focus more on constantly upgrading the product that I've created. Yeah.
So in terms of the candles, you said that for everyone you customize it for a different experience. How does that process work?
Okay. So customization comes from a part of, your emotions, right? So what I want is, when we do events, for example, we have a whole display of about 20, 30 different fragrances. And each fragrance hits a memory, right? It could be the smell of your garden. It could be the majlis that, you and your family get together and have coffee in. It could be anything. So people how do I say that? They basically resonate with those fragrances. And sometimes they choose an individual fragrance, or they choose multiple, because they're like, oh my God, this reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen. This reminds me of the garden that I was playing it when I was growing up. So we do a combination, and then we create something magical for them. And then we build it into a body candle. We also do car fragrances. We do author oils for your skin. So and we also do like kandura and abaya tags, which means you get these, your favorite fragrances, whether it's bukhur, oud, coffee, whatever that might be. We put them in a bottle, and then you just hang it into your wardrobe. And it's so amazing, because your entire wardrobe starts smelling of the whole thing, and it stays even longer than putting on bukhur, So
because it's in the cabinet for hours, it's just there.
Exactly. It's literally marinating with your clothes. So it's
I like
amazing.
that word. It's literally marinating with your clothes. So now you have so many different product lines from when you started. How did that idea come to build 1, 2, 3? Where did you get the inspiration to diversify to so many different products?
I think I'm just, as a person, I'm very creative. So I think for me was like, what could you do with fragrances is where my head always revolves, Okay, great. The candles are always a hit, and they're so good for your skin. And then from there, I'm like, so when I do events, a lot of people ask me, okay, do you do car fragrances, And I'm like, no. But then I started thinking about that, and I started then creating a product based on that. And then when it came to the abaya tags, because what happens is in a normal traditional Arabian home, when we put bahura, we literally stand over it and we wait for the smoke to kind of get infused into our clothing.
Yeah.
And then it stays on for a couple of hours, and that's about it. Now, there are two things with both of our products. So first of all is the abaya tags, where you just hang them into your wardrobe,
yeah.
and then it gets mixed into your clothing, and that stays for weeks, if not months. Separately, we also like have our body massage candle. So when you use that on your skin, so you can use it as a cream, you can use it as a candle itself, so your house smells amazing, or you can also use it as a body massage oil to get yourself a good warm rub. Either way, whenever you use it on your skin, you basically place it all over your skin, and then the residue, the basic whatever's left on your fingertips, you just go dab 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 on your clothes, and it smells amazing. So it's really about coming up with all these sort of ideas, and I always think about what more of a value can I give them, and it's not just about having a product, but what that product can actually do.
But how does this work? You have a candle. How does a candle then, you said you can use that for a body massage or a rub.
That's right.
How does that work? Because it's a candle.
Absolutely. So the candle is basically a 10% ratio of soy wax. And then we've got other elements like shea butter, jojoba oils,
really
castor
cool.
oil,
Yeah.
avocado oil. So we combine all these nutritious oils, which is so good for your skin, creating an organic product that nourishes you, it relaxes you, and it makes you feel really good about yourself.
So then you light the candle
You
and
can-
then that melts.
Absolutely. So a lot of people. So when I create the candles, I created it to a texture where you could use it like a cream itself, because but it has a wick at the center. You choose to decide what you want to do. Light it as a candle, use it as a cream. Just dip your finger in and then just moisturize. Or you can even light it down, and then once it converts into warm oil, you get more of that relaxation feeling where you're able to, indulge.
That is so interesting. I've never heard, because when you were explaining this, I thought there was a separate product, which was a cream and a lotion, and a separate candle.
No.
And then I was trying to understand, how does that link? So that's very cool. I've never heard of this concept. It's very interesting.
Well, I hope you enjoy yours.
Thank you. I definitely will. We talked about different product lines. In terms of hiring, right? I imagine for a company that's growing, every single hire means a lot. It's really important to have the right person within the team, because that could make or break the team or the company or the morale as well. How do you know from just 20-30 minutes of an interview or a phone interview, how do you know who is the right person?
When I think about, and I always link everything to my past experiences. So when I joined the banking industry, they took me based on who I was as a person, right? They never took me because I had the necessary education or the degree or the experience. And I always try to think about what I would want for the person working with me, because again, it's about having that long-term relationship, because you're going to coach them, you're going to train them on every little detail of your business. But then if they keep leaving, then that's a concern. So I don't look for people with experience. I always try to look for people that are passionate about the role itself, are passionate about the skills that I'm looking for. And as soon as I identify those strengths within that person, I consider the job given to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had an experience, whether it's in your own business or at the bank or a colleague or anyone, where the wrong hire has costed that company, that business, that firm more than money?
Well, I'm afraid that happens quite a bit, because, especially after COVID, people are trying to cut costs and be able to, hire talent that might not necessarily have the right skills for the role. And it does impact the role. It impacts that relationship, with the clients, and eventually it impacts the whole organization. But I think it's all about overcoming, from that. I've seen it time and time again, but trial and error, I don't know. I'd say trial and error is just a part of this journey of life. I might not necessarily get it right all the time. They could just be, telling me the things that I want to hear. But again, it's just the lesson that you sort of learn from, and you learn quick enough to know. And, and then the next time you ask a different set of questions to identify who that person might be, to ensure that they're the right person for the role. Yeah.
There's so much talk about personal branding, growth, and trying to build a presence, whether it's online or offline. How do you think one does that when they start a business? Is it just through social media? Is it word of mouth? And how did you do that with House of Nadia?
I basically started joining different communities. I told you Facebook has been one of the key areas of learning and growth for me. So I'm kind of a silent watcher over there. I just join every single Facebook group related to women, business led businesses and coachings, trainings, whatever that might be. And I'm a part of everything. So every time there's a question posted up, I always make sure that I follow that so that I can see what the outcome is, the advice, the guidance, and I slowly use that into my own business. Social media plays a huge role because that's what keeps people entertained and updated. I think Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat are three major platforms. Right now, I love that I can just go onto TikTok Live, and then hundreds of people kind of join on board, and we do the storytelling. Like, people don't buy the product that I have, they buy my story, and that's what it is always been about. So I don't think it's, if you really want to have the right people in your life, it's not the right business or the right sales, it's the right people in your life. I think it's all about being true to yourself and sharing that story wherever the opportunity you may find.
And even with these groups, there's also Tie the Buy. And there was this actually women's pitch night, which is one of the reasons how we connected as well.
Absolutely.
So there's so many opportunities in the UAE, and we're very blessed that way, that there's so
100%.
many ways to connect, grow your business,
That's true.
and even increase that day to day.
That's true.
What I also wanted to understand is, what do you think people are doing wrong when they brand or when they talk about their business?
I think they focus too much on the material value of it. And when they don't achieve that, I think it comes across more of sort of a disappointment, and then they feel discouraged, and then they're questioning whether this was even a business to start with. I mean, listen, we are in Dubai, and there are thousands of restaurants among us, right? What would make one set us different to the other? And that really comes from their own journey and storytelling of their own brand. Sometimes people just come in because they love, they find you hilarious as a person, or they find you extremely inspiring, and that's what drags people to you. People will come. You just need to share the story, and I think this is what it is about.
Okay. Speaking of story, I was going through that. The company does AI for fragrance personalization. That's something I've never heard of. So how does that work?
So the long-term goal for House of Nadia is about creating 8D audio-visual sort of an experience where, let's say, we would be able to have our own shop at some point, and people can come in and they're like, so here are 100 candles. I don't know which one I'm going to browse through. I think whenever you walk into a candle store, I always end up sniffing everything one by one.
I open the cover, I smell it, and then, yeah.
Exactly. And then, okay, I like this, I'm going to take it. But I feel like when I created this brand, I wanted it to be beyond just having candles. I want people to truly, get in touch with their inner soul and reflect on who they are and where they've come from to who they've become as a person. And sometimes that means you need to go down memory lane. So this is how I want to incorporate AI, with audio visuals, and trigger a memory that allows them to create the actual authentic piece of what they're looking for when they are back in their, safe places, at home or in the car. We do spend a lot of our times in the car. And that is why, even with my product, the Travel Peace Candle, it's called the Travel Peace Candle because it's supposed to give you peace wherever you travel. So if you're stuck in the car, whatever it is, take it easy. We're too busy cussing the car in front of us, and we're stressing ourselves even more. Relax. You've got something right next to you that reminds you of all the amazing things that you have become as a person, and feel free to use that and let that surrounding keep you relaxed and self-love, to be honest.
When we talk about self-love and taking it easy, I feel like it's a brand of House of Nadia, a brand with the soul. So how do you differentiate, or not even differentiate, how do you make sure that your brand stays relevant when you compare it with so many other fragrance brands in the country or in the world?
Well, to be honest, staying relevant for me is not competing myself with anybody. It's more like we complete, each other as businesses. I look at what they do and I feel inspired to try different other things, or things that put me out of my comfort zone, take risks, be able to really go back to being human and link that with my candles.
Thank you so much for your time, Nadia. It was an absolutely inspiring conversation. We learned about your journey, your growth, and was really great conversation. Great to have you.
Nakash, thanks for having me. It was such a pleasure being here today.
Take care.
You
Thank
too.
you.